You are listening to Podcasting 101 with RSS.com, getting you ready to launch and grow your podcast.
Hey everyone, Ashley here with RSS Podcasting. On today's episode, I'm bringing you Deepti Ahuja. Deepti is a podcast producer with HT Smartcast, and she has produced more than 100 podcasts in a single year. Collectively, the podcasts she helps to produce have earned more than 55 million downloads. Enjoy the show. Well, Deepti, I'm so excited that you're here today. Can you tell everybody about what it is that you do?
Absolutely, Ashley. I have been a podcaster, a podcast producer, and podcast coach for the past almost 2.5 years. I work with the Hindustan Times podcasting leg, which is HT Smartcast. And in the past 2 years, they've been really good years. Pandemic, for a change, has been really good for podcasting. It's a controversial opinion, and I shouldn't be saying it, but well, why not celebrate that fact as well? I have thus far produced about 181 podcasts and in 40 genres in 6 languages. So yeah, life's been good.
It sounds like it's also been really busy.
It's been very busy.
And now, did you say 180 podcasts, like separate shows?
Separate shows, 180 podcasts, out of which on 2 of our podcasts, we just crossed 1,000 episodes each.
Oh, my word. So that's a lot of work.
Yes.
Okay. So now when you say you're a podcast producer, do you mean that you actually have a hand in helping with each one of these episodes?
To an extent.
Okay.
So I have a very small team. Here's how it goes, the entire process. So Hindustan Times is a large publishing house. We have print, we have radio, we have digital agencies, we have all of that. Every other podcaster, most of the podcasters are either print journalists or they are RJs or, they are just people who are passionate about podcasting and want to try out the medium. They are also CEOs, CHROs, all of that. The entire corporate world is also on podcasting. So in our little universe, we have about 120, 150 podcasters, right, at HT. And apart from that, of course, we also rope in podcasters from outside. And we call that HT Smartcast Originals. Now, the thing is that my team just consists of 5 people. The core team is just 5 people. And so we had to create this entire, what is it called? An inventory of things, a method to do things.
Like a workflow.
Absolutely. So we have a content calendar that's updated, on a monthly basis, where we have almost 25 episode releases in a day. Apart from that, we have a pipeline where we release at least 5 podcasts per month. And what I tend to do is I tend to train all the podcasters so that they can become self-sufficient and they have their own agency and they enjoy themselves. They have their own space to, explore the medium in their own way. And considering the fact that they come from such a legacy company, credibility has never been an issue for us, right? So in their own agency, in their own way, the way they explore their own medium, then they have the ownership, they're responsible for their own weekly episodes and all of that. And I intervene every, 3 months when I want to discuss data with them, when I want to discuss their podcast performance, and so on and so forth. I hope that answers the question.
It actually does. It's fantastic. I think it's I think a couple of the things that you mentioned are pretty interesting. You said that you train the podcasters to be self-sufficient. So you give them like a checklist almost, if you will, of the things that they should be doing in order to produce a good episode.
Yeah. So we take about 3 to 4 weeks to release any podcast, right? And we bank 5 episodes, which we do with them, which we record with them. And during that time, the training is ongoing. So a lot of them speak faster, and so they don't know how to breathe really well. A lot of them have issues scripting because, say, for example, they come from the print world, and the way you write in a print format in that medium is very different from the way you'd write scripts for a podcast, right? Some of them don't even write a script, and so you have to give them a little bit of structure. So each person, each individual is very different. And I coach them for about 3 to 4 weeks. Apart from that, I have, we have the HT Smartcast social media channels, and I have my own social media channels where I keep putting out these small nuggets of information where, people can just do a revision of the sorts. Plus, you've come on our show, Ye podcast kya hai, right? Where we have expert opinions. So anyone who needs to who needs a refresher course, who needs like a crash course in podcasting, who needs a follow-up, there is enough information out there. And of course, we also make ourselves available almost 24/7 to them so that they feel supported. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, it sounds like you basically take anybody who wants to create a show and you give them all the tools necessary to make it happen.
Absolutely. Constantly, to be honest. I mean, because things keep changing in the podcasting world. I mean, RSS has come up with such amazing things already that we spoke of in our episode on your podcast, yeah, we were blown. Everything keeps changing so fast. So we keep refreshing the content as well, the educational material that is there on podcasting.
That's amazing. And what's interesting is I actually had the luxury of speaking to our founders for the very first 2 episodes, and just listening to them about all of the things going on in the background that a lot of people don't even realize. Because, I mean, you open your podcatcher, like your Google Podcasts or your iTunes, and you turn on your content, you listen to whoever it is that's speaking, and you don't realize all the moving parts going on in the background. You don't realize that they're having to book the interviews. They're having to write the podcast scripts. They're having to put all these systems and processes in place. And so to me, it sounds like what you do is an invaluable service. So why is it that you think that someone should hire a podcast producer?
So, podcasting, the way it was marketed initially, at least in India, we were told that it's such a friendly, democratic medium. Everyone can do it. Anyone can do it. And the first person who should be listening to your podcast, who could give you feedback, are your close ones, your loved ones. But the thing is that your loved ones don't always understand the medium. They won't always understand the subject matter that you're talking about. They don't have expertise there. And another controversial opinion right here, that a lot of times they might just not be invested in you in that way. Right? And so hiring a podcast producer becomes very clean. It becomes a cleaner process for you where, the producer is being paid to provide a service where they keep you in check, where they can give you enough feedback. They can do secondary research or primary research for you. They can coordinate guests for you. They can help you edit, or they can get it edited from someone if they have a team. If an individual podcaster decides to hire a team, they will also help with the distribution side of things, because it's a constant, it's a constant partnership with your distributors. You can't just leave your episode there. You have to market it. You have to talk about it. You have to talk to different kinds of distribution channels. And your podcast producer would be invested in your content more than they would be probably invested in you and your personal relationship with them. And so, therefore, it just falls in line, right? Because on podcasts, content is king.
It's so true. And, something that you said that really struck me is you had mentioned that the podcast producer, because you're paying them, they're invested in you. And it's kind of like how if you go to the gym, let's say, and you decide, all right, I'm going to get healthy, I'm going to get fit, I'm going to work out. And you go into it and you have, let's say you find an accountability buddy, someone who's going to say, come with me, we're going to keep working out, we're going to keep getting thin. Well, and then what happens? Eventually they stop coming with you. They stop checking in. They stop asking how much weight you've lost. But a personal trainer, someone that you've paid, they're going to be checking in with you because they know if you're not getting the results that you want, what are you going to do? You're going to fire them. And so, yes, exactly. And so I think the idea of having a podcast producer That's actually really brilliant because, like you said, if you're getting paid to do it, you're going to be actually keeping them top of mind rather than letting them fail.
Absolutely. It's a part of their performance as well, right? It becomes a part of your podcast and becomes a part of their portfolio as well, where they, say that, oh, I produced this podcast and this podcast is this successful. It has these many listens. It has these kind of guests. So they would also be proud to, sort of own the property along with you.
Absolutely. I mean, that makes perfect sense because if someone's there and they care about it, they're going to do everything they can to help you be successful because your success becomes their success and their success becomes your success. And the more that you can show that you have downloads that are coming in, you have, new listeners that are coming in, then that becomes your piece that you can say, hey, I'm a podcast producer. I helped this guy become successful. Here's what I can do for you.
Yeah, it's in the beginning itself. Like when you asked me what I did, that's exactly what I said, right? Like so many podcasts, so many languages, so many genres. And the one thing that I forgot to mention was that 55 million listens on all of my podcasts till date. I mean, that is my achievement on a whole. And that is something a podcast producer would also take care of for your podcast.
That's incredible. I mean, those kind of numbers, people dream about that kind of stuff. And so I think that the idea of having someone who can help you achieve it, I mean, who wouldn't want to hire a podcast producer?
I don't know. You tell me.
One of the things you mentioned actually really struck me. You said that the pandemic, even though it's a controversial opinion, has actually helped podcasting. And the reality is it's so true. Because whenever we were all at home, what did we do? We were looking at our phones. We were looking at YouTube. We were looking at, even our podcatchers. So I'm curious now, whenever the pandemic first hit, did that like immediately give you guys a reason to start reaching out to people? Or did you do anything to tell people, hey, you should start your podcast? What was it that you did directly as a result of the pandemic that helped in the business? I'm just curious.
So when we began, we were, I think I entered the company in November 2019. And I was already given a task. I was already told that, hey, you have to produce these many podcasts. I was a little shocked because, that's not the number that I thought would come to me. And then the pandemic hit and it was expected that, the number will drop. We ended up revisiting a lot of us. I mean, a lot of different mediums ended up revisiting, their end of year tasks and, all of those things. But the thing is, with podcasts, the moment the pandemic hit, March 2020, that was, oh my God, I can't believe we are entering 2022. Wow. Wow, it's hitting me. Anyway, so March 2020, from a couple of lack of listens, we straight away hit 1.2 million listens. And then we were consistently making 1.2 million listens up until December 2020. That sort of motivated everyone to come on board and make a podcast of their own. The other thing that was happening was that a lot of people, a lot of RJs, print journalists, a lot of influencers, a lot of, corporate people inside the system, there was a lot of shuffling happening. And, we all of us suffered a recession, like world over. And there was this thing of protecting personal brand, or at least having a personal brand. And this is exactly what podcasts did for each and every podcaster that I have on board today. It made them a personal brand. It gave them personal branding on a medium that is still organically growing. There is no, paid stuff happening over here. Everyone is still collaborating with each other, and by collaborating, I mean the true sense of the word, not like paying to collaborate and, all of those things. So when that happened, it gave all of them a personal brand and therefore gave them a little more confidence about their careers, about their jobs. and in a way reduced stress, the career stress that we were all facing. So it kind of did that. So the pandemic sort of brought down the stress for all of my podcasters to quite an extent, right? And the moment we hit January 2021, we shot up to like 6 million listens. So we thought it's going to go down because now, we've been an year into the pandemic, and then, that year, we don't know what the next year is going to look like. Are we going to have the second wave, not have it? Are the markets going to open up? We didn't have any clue, right? But the moment we hit 6 million listens, right, in January, we were like, okay, this medium is here to stay. At least in India, this medium is here to stay. Yeah.
I think it's not just in India. I think it's also in the States, because as people were starting to go back to work, as soon as they had that commute again, it was, okay, well, what can I do while I'm on my way to work? Have something to listen to, whether it's to educate, to entertain, to inspire, or even just get through the day.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, I mean, podcasters, they have some really cool stuff to share. They're not only just sharing their personal stories, they're sharing, educational content, entertaining content. Some of them make you laugh. Some of them make you cry. Some of them scare the crap out of you. I mean, talking about the true crime stuff. If you listen to the true crime podcast, those freak me right out. But it is fascinating how, what used to happen was, if you wanted to get your message out to a lot of people, you had to go and, either get a radio station to hire you or get a newspaper to hire you. And then you almost had to pay to play. You had to get all this stuff in place, and you had to have a really good message, because if you didn't have a good message, you were let go, or you were told you couldn't do it anymore. But podcasting has kind of democratized the content system. It's made it so that anybody who has a microphone and has a voice can speak out and share their message. And I think it's pretty cool that a podcast producer can take that message, refine that message, and help get it out there even more. So I'm curious, let's say I want to start a podcast and I come to you and I say, all right, tell me the first step. What would you say to them?
Two things. One, that we will inculcate discipline, because that's very necessary. The fact remains that any podcast that hasn't run, for 54 episodes, it's not going to be successful in that sense. Even if it is, then, it's an anomaly. But you should at least have 54 episodes, which means that you should produce your podcast for at least 1 year, right? So it, of course, requires a lot of discipline. But the thing is that I never simply say discipline and then, get the cane out. With me, it's always supposed to be fun, right? If the, that's my feedback. If my podcaster in training says, oh, I had a lot of fun, my job is done, right? I just have to get them hooked onto the medium, and that's my job. Now, the thing is that I start off with a couple of things that make sense to them later. So for me, there is this very important quote that, has made sense to me all my professional life, which is by Walter Murch, which is editing begins, editing starts at the beginning of your project, which is what we try to do with, a concept note. Then we go into voice training. We go into writing scripts if anyone requires it. A lot of people are natural speakers. A lot of people are, natural orators. A lot of people aren't. And so different people have, different ways of doing things, right? And my first few sessions are just speak, just talk. I'm listening. We just have a chat, right? And then we go into and the one thing that works very well with podcasters in training is that when they get to hear their own voice, when they get to hear a playback, that's when they have those, aha moments. They go like, oh my God, I sound so good.
Or, oh my God, I sound so bad.
Or, oh my God, I sound so bad. Or, oh my God, my content is just amazing. Maybe I need to work harder on my voice. Or, oh God, I can't do the content bit. Can you please get someone to write for me? And so we pick out these small little things and then we start working on it. So no one podcaster has one set pattern. Each podcaster is different. And so their training is also extremely different. And once they feel confident enough. So as I said in the beginning, the ownership, the agency comes from the podcaster. The moment a podcaster says, can we please record an episode and get it out there? That is when we go for first recording.
Okay, that makes sense. So now you said 54 episodes. That is impressive, but I'm curious. Now, okay, so you said 54 episodes, and so that's about an episode a week.
Yeah.
Do you do them weekly or do you do them daily, bi-weekly? How do you do this?
Some of my podcasts are weekly. Some of my podcasts are bi-weekly. Some of the podcasts we produce are also daily, and some of them episodes are released twice a day.
Wow. So now I'm curious, with all that content, so are people paying you to produce these episodes?
So the kind of podcasting that brands want to do, the format in which the brands want to pay money to, have podcasts talk about them is branded episodes or branded podcasts for us in India, at least. That's what most of the Indian podcasting industry is catering to at this point of time. And slowly and steadily, of course, the more educated we are about podcasting, the more educated the entire industry, the advertising industry and brands become about podcasting, then we will, of course, bifurcate into the other kinds of, formats for monetization. But some brands absolutely do pay upfront and very happily so.
Now, can the average Joe off the street come to you and say, I want to produce a podcast? Or is it more that you're looking for a specific type of person who comes to you and says, I want to start a podcast?
Okay, so here's the difference. A lot of companies are UGC companies, which means they are user-generated. They produce user-generated content, and they basically have a bigger platform with a lot of listeners on their platform, and so therefore that's how the model works over there. For a lot of companies like HT Smartcast, we do a lot of PGC work, right? Where we produce the content, we edit it, we take care of the podcaster, we take care of the podcast. And when an individual from outside the company, from outside the HT universe comes to us, we tend to, strike a partnership with them. So, of course, they are also, working twice as hard. If they are subject matter experts in whatever they are going to talk about, we are subject matter experts in training them to become better podcasters, right? And then we also take care of the editing bit, we take care of the post-production, we take care of distribution, we take care of marketing. We also give them data insights. Like I said, after 3 months, I just step in and I go like, okay, time to revisit everything and see what we want to change and see what we want to keep and what is working for you on an individual level. What will work for your audience, on a larger level, and what might work for brands for them to come and pay to be on your podcast, right? So it's a partnership. We share. It's a rev share model, if I'm okay to say that.
Absolutely, I think that makes perfect sense because it's similar to how like Google and YouTube work, where if the person creating the videos succeeds, so will YouTube. So the goal is, all right, we're going to give you all these tools because like YouTube Creator Academy, they give you all the tools you need to start a YouTube channel completely for free. But then, you put the content up and if you do well, they get a cut. And even if you don't do well, they get their cut.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they are, see, the thing is that when an individual starts to podcast, they are definitely taking a braver step than the podcast company. And that needs to be recognized, that needs to be validated, because you can't as an individual, it's just, inhuman to not validate that. It's as simple as that, right? When I was an individual podcaster, and I hadn't started podcast production as such as a career path, when I wasn't on the podcast production and podcast coaching career path, that's what I faced. And I felt lost and I felt alone in the entire process. And to be honest, podcasting is not it looks like, it appears that you can do everything on your own and that you can do everything in isolation. But that's not true. It's just like any other medium also, where things happen in collaboration. And the more you collaborate, the better it is. Right?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Because I mean, people forget that when we're behind our microphones, we're sitting at home. We're sitting at home and we're speaking out to the ether, if you will. And we have no idea if the content that we're producing is going to land. We don't know who's going to hear it. So I definitely can see the perks of having someone who's in your corner, basically saying like, yeah, you got this, you're doing it, and keep going. So I think that everything that we've been talking about today, what is really sticking out to me is that having a podcast producer in your corner is more than just having someone who's helping you produce your content. It's also someone who's like backing you, who's giving you the validation that maybe a listener won't. It's someone who's going to be your cheerleader, who's going to be, like you said, your coach, but also, like you also said, your partner. And I think that's really beautiful. We're having a touching moment here in this podcast. It's that warm, fuzzy feeling. Well,
yes, it certainly is, especially with Christmas around the corner.
So I'm curious, you said that one of the things that you do is whenever you start coaching people, you give them systems and you give them, almost like a checklist, if you will. So do you have like a template of things that you give them, or is it individual based on the podcaster you're working with?
I do have a template. That's how I roll. I have systems for everything. That's how, a team of 5 people is producing 180 podcasts today with like 50 to 55 active podcasts every month. So of course, there's system for everything. I'm a very, very hardcore administrative sort of a person, despite the fact that I'm a quote unquote creative person, right? So I do have a system. There are a couple of documents that are ready for a podcaster. Of course, one is the podcast hygiene, where we talk about how to record it in different formats, how to write a script. And even if they want to write pointers and they don't want to write the entire script, that's also fine. So there are pointers for those. Then how to, then there is an entire concept note, which I give to each one of my podcasters so that they think for their podcast, so that they understand exactly what they want to do. And the questions are very, very specific, right? So if I have an audience question, if I, for example, want to ask my podcaster, whom do you think your target audience is? It's not going to be just one question. So they have to write, of course, whether they're, which age group do they belong to, what sex is it, what city do they belong to, what SEC section they belong to, and, so on and so forth, right? All of those things, educational levels, all of those things they have to write. But apart from that, then there are questions like, so what does, a day in the life of your listener look like, right? Because that will determine for them when their episode should be released. Then they would have a question like, what is your audience really looking for? Right? So someone can say, oh, they will stumble upon my podcast because they're just looking to escape from reality. Right? But then what will you offer as a podcaster to your listener? And then the question then becomes that, okay, so maybe they clicked on my podcast because they want to escape reality, but what they will get in turn is a sense of community. They will get a sense of, belonging, that they will get an expert advice on something that they were looking for and therefore were feeling lacking, right? So these are the kind of questions that very, very streamlined questions is what I do with my concept note. And then it goes on to, guidelines for show notes, guidelines for podcast intro, podcast outro, all of those things. And,
That's really amazing, because everything that you're describing sounds like not only giving them ideas to make them start thinking about it from a listener's perspective, but what you've been describing sounds like everything that someone would need to know if they actually want to be successful. Because if they're not thinking about the end listener, the end person that's going to be consuming the content, then they're setting themselves up for failure.
That's true.
Yeah.
And they need to keep visiting it. I mean, so like I said, every 3 months, they revisit their concept note too.
Okay, so you actually do quarterly checks to make sure that they're living up to the expectations that have been set from the beginning.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I'm playful, I'm fun, but I'm also a hard taskmaster. So
Cracking the whip, making sure they do what they need to do.
absolutely, their success is my success, and my success is theirs.
That's fantastic. Well, where can people find you online if they are interested in learning more about your podcast production?
So if anyone has a question for me, they can always reach out to me on my Instagram handle. It is Mind Your Podcast, like mind your language. It is Mind Your Podcast, MindYourPodcast. And for any kind of inspiration regarding podcasting, right? I mean, that was just information on podcasting. But if you want to be inspired to become a podcaster, then you must follow us on @HT Smartcast. That is HTSMARTCAST. And we are available on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Clubhouse. Have I left anything out? I don't know. Have I left?
I'm not sure. That was a lot. What's awesome is if you look at HT Smartcast, you might even find me, Ashley Grant from RSS.
Absolutely. On Ye Podcast, kya hai? So all you've got to do is, if you want to listen to our previous conversation, our first conversation ever on a podcast, you must go to htsmartcast.com. That is HTSMARTCAST.com. And either search for Ashley Grant or RSS.
Yes, Ashley with RSS Podcasting.
Yeah. Or Ye Podcast kya hai, which is YEH podcast kya hai.
Yes, we'll make sure we leave a link in the show notes. Now I'm going to ask you the same thing I ask everyone, and it always puts them on their toes. Is there anything I didn't ask you would prefer that I had?
Oh, well, there are so many questions, Ashley, but I think we should continue our conversations after the recording stop. There is so much. So, Ashley, we, of course, after all the, and conversations with people globally have been eye-opening, one of them being you, right? And it's been so amazing to, not work for an industry where you don't know where it's going, right? Now we know where it's going. Now we know where we are all going in terms of podcast industry globally. And I love that. So yeah, so that's one thing. And we will continue our conversations, but maybe off the mic, off the record.
I love it. Well, I just want to say that I really appreciate your time today. I know that you're very busy. I mean, a lot of podcasts going on. So thank you for taking the time to chat with us.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for calling me. This was really, really nice. It made my day. Thank you.
Well, my fellow podcasters, I hope you enjoyed all of the insights Deepti had to share with us. To learn more about how to grow and launch your own podcast, visit our website at rss.com/blog. You can get started for free and have your first episode on us. Thanks for tuning in.